Missionaries. As soon as we think of that word, I don't know what comes to your mind, but often what comes to my mind is Africa or China or I don't know. I mean, some foreign place, somewhere that they go and give their lives and so forth. I wonder if God's calling us to have missionaries right here in Canada, right in your neighborhood. I had a very interesting thought a while ago, and it was a group of young people I was with, and they were talking about technical things and how to interact with this whole techie world that's out there today. And a lot of it was honestly beyond me, but I caught the essence of what they were saying. They were saying that there's a whole virtual world out there, and there are young people that have a passion for the Lord Jesus Christ that are trying to touch that virtual world. And they were talking about how they have a virtual church and so forth, and I didn't get it all. But they were pretty excited about it, saying how many tens of thousands of people they reach with that on an ongoing, consistent basis, because they have this virtual church in the virtual world, speaking to young people in the language that they can hear today. And he gave us a challenge at the end. He said, would you ever consider supporting a virtual church missionary? I'm thinking, what could that be? A virtual church missionary? That would be someone who would be sitting in a house close by you, down in an apartment somewhere in your town, in your city, but has this passion to reach the younger generation and does so through the whole mechanism of reaching them in the virtual world. Now, I don't want to try and convince you today to think about supporting those. That's not what I was talking about. But I really believe that this whole idea of missionaries is something we need to refocus on. I think we need to think about how can we support a missionary. We happen to live here in the Niagara region. I don't remember anybody speaking about, we're going to have missionaries and they're going to be planted in the Niagara region. Let's all help them and support them because they're full-time missionaries spreading the gospel in the Niagara region. We don't have a problem thinking about if they went to Africa, but not to Niagara, not to the city that you live in, not to the place where you are. Let's rethink things. How do we transform our nation? And there's many aspects to that. We've talked about a few of them in other clips, but how do we transform it? One of them is, could we dare to think about that we actually would have missionaries in our own backyards that we would support and encourage? I want to give you just a little story here. A number of years ago, I was looking through an organization I was involved with, looking to be able to support some organization that was really working on the most difficult areas of Vancouver. If you know anything about Vancouver, this whole area called Hastings Street, it's a very difficult place. And so I was recommended to speak to, and I called this man that was really working in the Hastings Street area. And I talked to him for a little while, and I was really awed by the kinds of things he was doing and so forth. And I know Hastings Street. I know how dangerous it is, really. And I said, so where do you live? He said, well, we live right here on Hastings Street. I said, really? You told me you're married and you have young children and you live on Hastings Street? Now that in itself says so much about my lack of understanding of what it means to be a missionary. Now, if we had said that he'd gone to Africa, in a difficult place in Africa, and he took his wife and his family, oh yeah, well, that's what he should do. But me thinking Hastings Street? Could you think in your community? Could we think in my community? Could we actually support a missionary? A friend of ours wanted to go into the Kitchener-Waterloo area, and they weren't from there, but they really felt that God was calling them to there and to establish a mission field, if you will, in a particular neighborhood. So when they first got there, his wife and they have a small child, they went and they took a taxi ride. Said to the taxi driver, what's the area in the city that you really don't want to go to? That when you get a call to go there, I don't want to go there because it's a very difficult. Oh yes, of course. He said, take us there. And so they went there and they actually rented an apartment there. And they stay there recognizing that they feel that they're called to that neighborhood as missionaries to transform that neighborhood. Now, if we distill that down a little further, because we could think, oh, well, it's just a few. No, but if we distill it down a little further, is that you and I? Can we be the missionaries in our neighborhood? Can we take that whole mindset and say to our whole sphere of influence that I'm here on God's business. We don't tell them, mind you, but we're here for God's purposes. We brought to this particular neighborhood in a time such as this because we can bring Jesus Christ into our sphere of influence. I want you to know missionaries are not just in China. Hopefully, they're just down the street from us. Anyway, great to be with you again today. Just a thought for each one of us. God bless you.